just shouted. I mean, it doesn't look that far. And now there's nothing they can do except watch as their shiny new boat plows straight into 100 million tons of frozen water. Uh-oh, the insurance company's gonna be feeling the pain tomorrow. The point I'm making here is that anyone with even a surface level understanding of the film industry, plus legacy entertainment journalists who like to pretend it still matters what they think, has known for a long time that this movie was headed for absolute disaster. Whether it was the baffling casting choices, the laughable DEI parade pretending to be dwarves, the nightmarish CGI monstrosities that replaced them, the hypothetical star whose complete inability to shut her mouth quickly and efficiently turned her into one of the most toxic celebrities in Hollywood, or every piece of official media released about this film getting ratioed so far into oblivion that it practically formed its own quantum singularity, vanished out of space and time, and emerged on the other side of the universe, Event Horizon style. The warnings were all there, and they've been discussed at length by every content creator on YouTube, but now at last, we have come to the crunch, dear viewer. The last few days before the movie releases, when the old PR machine has to grind itself into high gear and take on the seemingly insurmountable task of getting people enthused for Snow White. Well, I think it's fair to say they've got some hurdles to overcome. Hurdle the first is the dire box office predictions, with the film expected to make just over 50 million on its opening weekend, which is only slightly higher than the Marvels managed, and that movie eventually struggled up to $200 million worldwide.
Play Captain Marvel.
Which hero do you think you want to be
I don't
today?
know, does anyone want me to do it again?
Yes, Bree,
Be
I want
wary.
that.
No
I want that with all
timeline
my
exists
heart.
where Magneto. Who are you calling a
Not very
raccoon?
good for a film with a reported budget of 300 million.
Now, who am I gonna banish from this match?
Hurdle the second is the widely reported spat between Gal Gadot and Rachel Zegler, because they clearly have very different perspectives on the whole Israel-Palestine issue, which means it's hard enough to get them to even share the same room, never mind go through the kind of excruciating, fawning interviews where they clutch each other's hands and pretend to be soulmates or whatever, which seems to be expected at this point. Damn man, all we're missing is some guy who sounds like he uses sulfuric acid as mouthwash to ask them about the gayness level of their movie.
The gayest Marvel project yet.
You know, the kind of big questions that clearly need to be asked about the art of cinema.
Yes, yes.
But the biggest hurdle, and this truly is a
Bakit
biggie,
Tuna
is that the
Snow?
film isn't
Why
even
Tuna
getting
Snow?
a
Come
traditional
on.
premiere anymore.
You'll need a
It was
top-notch
reported a
team to
couple of
win
days
this
ago
one.
that the film's intended UK premiere in central London has been cancelled because of fears about the backlash to the movie and its star.
Oh no! What?
Be
What
wary.
happened?
No
What happened?
timeline
Oh no, how
exists where
terrible.
Magneto yields.
That's just awful. How terrible. Oh no!
And to be honest, I can totally understand why they did it. The potential optics of Rachel Zegler and the rest of the cast getting publicly booed by a big crowd at the premiere of their own movie would be the sort of thing that goes viral within a matter of minutes. The problem is that this is kind of like digging one hole to fill another, because cancelling a major premiere means less publicity, and less publicity means less interest in the films. It's also a very public acknowledgement that yes, people really don't like our
30
movie
seconds
because
before
we
you
don't know
attack.
how to win
Get
them
ready.
over, and all we can think to do now is run and
Be
hide.
wary.
That was all
No
bad enough by
timeline
itself, but then the news broke yesterday that even the film's
Be
US
wary.
premiere is being drastically scaled back, which means no red carpet event, no real media presence, and no chance for the stars to speak to journalists and promote their movie. Red carpet events are actually pretty important media tools to promote your film, and the fact this movie
battle
isn't
starts
even
in
getting
5,
one is a major
4,
sign of Disney's
3,
lack of confidence in
2,
it. Again, I
1.
can totally understand the thinking behind it, because let's be real here, putting Rachel Zegler in front of a hot mic is a bit like putting a toddler with ADHD in charge of a nuclear launch button. Every time she opens her mouth, my god, she loves to open her mouth, you can practically feel the Disney bean counter dying inside because she just shaved a few more $1 million off the film box office. It's funny actually, because she even tried to spin all of this backlash into some kind of weird positivity, a bit like Henry Cavill, which sure instead of about sincerity, or honesty, or respect, or charisma, or general likability. Whoa! I interpret people's feelings about this film as passion for it, and what an honor to be able to spark something jury, so executioner. We have the same feelings as everyone around us, and all we can do is give our best. Change your part you've had there, Rachel, considering your previous attitude towards people who think differently from you.
Probably. And if you disagree with something, click the unfollow button. I'll probably do the same.
The thing is, hiding a problem away isn't the same as actually solving it. You know you retreat from a controversy like the one swirled on your right side, you know you're supposed to acknowledge that it doesn't in fact exist. You don't know who caused it, and you don't know how to fix it. If you demonstrate a lack of confidence in your film and its star before it even releases, you're sending out the message that you know it's going to suck, you're simply trying to hunker down and minimize the damage. And wow, this movie's likely to cause quite
By the eye of Agamotto!
Company itself. At this point, it probably would have been better to just abort the theatrical release altogether, shift it out onto Disney Plus is taking financial hits. At least that way Disney can pick up some of the pure competition viewing metrics to spin it into some kind of success. This film had the most number of minutes viewed on a Thursday afternoon for any live-action remake of an animated film made in the first half of the 20th century. Instead of being confronted by the raw box office numbers, which, well, aren't looking good. Shit, man, it probably would have been cheaper and easier to remove Zegler from the movie altogether and reshoot all our scenes with a new actress. Oh well, just like those guys in the Lookout Tower watching that iceberg drift closer. The moon! Sit back, crack open a couple of cold ones and wait for impact. Something tells me it's going to be an entertaining couple of weeks. Anyway, that's all we got for today. Go away.
Watch out!
Gaming industry is changing at a rapid pace. It's becoming clear that the more companies that are doubling down are clearly feeling the strain of their stances in the sand as the profits, goodwill, and future foundation of players' loyalty is sweeping past them for more
Only 60
logical
seconds
and
left.
better intent.
Get that
This
vehicle
video will
moving
be a
again.
little all over the place. Monster Hunter, Assassin's Creed, Avowed, and much more, but it'll all make sense by the end, I assure you. To begin, let's go with this one from IGN.
Judge,
Monster Hunter Wilds
jury,
popularity is
executioner!
Says Yozo Tsuchimoto, who will soon become chief creative officer of Capcom's entire video game division, due to his success in the series, named the one reason why Valiant is so
30
successful.
seconds.
Of course, other Monster Hunter games have also however, in the case of Wilds, it's never been this cinematic by the as someone who's played a few, but not all
The
Vehicle reached a checkpoint. Keep up the
so
momentum.
in my experience. I really dug how the game fleshed out its world, brought you in with likable characters for the most part, and gave each person a distinct personality. My favorite parts of Wild's story, personally, and I think it's been long enough since release so that I can get a great subject out of story.
By the eye of Agamotto!
That are pretty much grown to be a genius idea in a series like this. Yeah, I know, it's basically Jurassic Park with candidate Monster Hunter, but it's still really cool. Because now
Always rise
Capcom can
again.
just bring back monsters to Wilds and future games that geographically have zero business being in that particular region of the world, without really having to explain how did this monster get here? Well, maybe someone had a vial of their blood from 100 years ago. And the Wyverians was race that started bought that vial of blood from some merchandise passing through and then they just took that blood and monster there. And like I said, it is this concept that now nothing is really ever extinct. Get Monster Hunter really going forward. And I don't know about you, but the idea of hybrid monsters that are maybe spliced between, say, I don't know, a Rakdos and a Gorgonzola, that sounds pretty freaking metal to me, guys. Or why not mix Arkveld with a Kangala? And then you got a big hairy dragon that can hold you down with bone chains. That can also shoot lethal farts out of every part of its body to kill you. Now that's a lot of damage. But this is the point. What Capcom has done here has blown the doors off what to expect from Monster Hunter going forward.
Only 60
They're going
seconds left.
somewhat into Resident Evil territory, and there's no way to start redoing other
Judge, jury,
executioner! Wild takes place only. If Jurassic Park has taught us
Judge,
anything,
jury,
it's that life
executioner!
sure is more will do that
Double
game.
kill!
Like I said, the success of Wild has
He's a
made it the
mutant's
breakout
greatest.
hit so far of the year by a landslide. According to
I
Matt
will knit the
Nutella,
dimensions
industry
back.
Down to 30
analyst,
seconds.
Wild has had the biggest launch in 2025 so far, surpassing everything and being the biggest game launch since Black Ops
Get
6
that vehicle moving again!
and PC, by the way, was a new platform, which is a shame.
Us against the world!
Still, players, regardless of this, Wild has made Capcom a lot of money. The kind of success that Capcom has been having is definitely what other companies can do. And the Gamer Report is well advanced success.
By the eye of Agamotto!
Direction says the relentless on-rails hand-holding story mode absolutely ridiculous and just want to explore on side path just the slightest bit. Look at this list of monsters, gather items, etc. But nope, gotta
Sorry,
get
guys,
tethered
sorry, guys.
back to the sluggish
The current
group
score
of the
is
child and get scolded
1,
for it.
2,
Did the developers
0.
seriously think people wanted this? They are treating the player base
Time
like
to
they're
switch
competent
things up,
children. Let me
including
play
which
the
side
game
you're on.
rules. Look, I do agree that the moments where
Open
Wild
your
slows
eyes.
the game to a
Reality
crawl to
is
make
but
you
an
leisurely walk
illusion.
with your group
The right
is
heroes could make
egregious.
all the
I think
difference.
that any game that does this is genuinely annoying, to be honest. They're not the only one to do that, I know. Plenty have as well. I mean, the more recent Final Fantasies have done it, as well as the new God of War games, which are especially egregious for just
Who are
being
you
full
calling
of
a
unskippable
raccoon,
sections
huh?
in that game, which is a big reason why I never replayed either new God of War games after I finished them. Although personally, the cutscenes in between the fights were awesome. Thankfully, the campaign isn't too long anymore.
Occasionally takes
And
stuff
once you
that
beat the
doesn't
main
belong
slice
to
of it, sure, there's more afterwards story-wise, but you're then off the leash, so to speak, and then allowed to do pretty much anything you want. Could Capcom have found a nicer balance in between the hand-holding and
coming
the
in
more
30
freedom of
seconds.
exploration?
Stay strong.
Absolutely. But for what it is, I won't lie, the story made me feel actually connected to the world of Monster Hunter in a way that previous games have not. And like I said in previous videos, the domination of specifically China and other Asian countries when it comes to video games is going to keep spreading like wildfire in the future, and the continuing decline of Western content
The
is
battle
not
starts in
far off
5,
either. As
4,
Eurogamer reports,
3,
about 50%
2,
of all Steam
1.
users in February 2025 were from China alone.
You need
And
to stop that
coincidentally,
vehicle in
Steam
its
also
tracks.
recently, around that time, hit its highest concurrent player count yet, sitting at around 40 million players
I'll
online
patch
at
you
one
up.
given time for the platform. According to Steam, there was a surge of demand
mind me.
and languages being supported in games being that of Chinese origin. Simplified Chinese to be exact. The increase, by the way, was a staggering 20.88%, which is a lot. Apparently, every time around this year, which also lands with Chinese New Year, there's a surge of players on different platforms. However, in Steam's case last year, during the same period, they saw an increase of 7.26% in Chinese players. So this year, they've almost tripled that engagement, which is something to note. Some reasons given as to why there's this massive presence in certain places for reasons. One is that games like Marvel Rivals or
Play. That's me.
popular, both made by Chinese studios, by the way.
I'll patch you
Although
up.
the big equalizer that opened the floodgates, so to speak, goes all the way back to Black Ops Wukong. Wukong, by the way, sold almost 9 million copies.
This is real firepower!
I think as of now, Wukong has actually even outsold Elden Ring, which is believed. And since then, the scene here from game industry
against the world!
December 2024, China has become an overnight video game making nation that is doubling its investment going forward when it comes to video game development. Sure, yeah, Monster Hunter Wilds is Japanese, not Chinese, but regardless, this Asian domination is only going to get worse in the West and not less in the future. After all, according to GameIndustry.biz here, China currently has about 722.5 million gamers in China alone in 2024. That number is expected to increase to about 747.9 million by 2028. Like, to put this in perspective for you, that means that China's market alone for video game content is about twice and then some
By the eye of Agamotto!
America right now. They want you to fathom how many people in China has that plays video games and supports and buys them. Now imagine catering this ever-growing crowd of people while simultaneously being across the globe, the places like America, Canada,
What a pair we
Australia,
made.
and more as well. The potential for China's mass expansion into video games quite literally has no bounds or sense of stopping
I'm not
anytime
gonna
soon.
make it
Like I
easy.
said, Wukong was the one that kind of broke the dam and released the deluge, so to speak, and it's like not even Asian devs need to just rely on their games alone. Sure, Monster
no
Hunter is
chance to
killing it
stop
right
them.
now, but these Asian countries
Better
are even
stop that
circling
vehicle.
like sharks smelling blood when it comes to Western devs as well. Just look at Assassin's Creed Shadows. It has 9 years done.
They hit a checkpoint.
Back in
Now
January,
might be a good time to stop
Shadows
them.
is make or break for Ubisoft as a company.
You're welcome.
When you place their dwindling stock up against this story, it paints an even bleaker picture, sadly, as well. For the once great sort of great, I guess, especially according to 9 meters of film. Shadows' entire development cost before the delays, it
I'll
sits somewhere
patch you up.
between $250 to $350 million. My God, that's a lot. But remember, you got to add another $20 million that was spent in November 2024 to right about now before Shadows launches to basically the door. So the actual number for Shadows development cost is likely somewhere in the $400 million ballpark. That's a lot of money. So to make this simplified, not including taxes or different changes of currency, we'll just use US business implementation. But Shadows was able to sell about 7 million copies out of the game, and do about as well as
This
Monster
is
Hunter
real
pretty much at
firepower!
release, to essentially break
Against the
Ubisoft
world!
somewhat even on the game prior to them making any profit. Now, would Shadows do this? Maybe. I mean, let's be real, the franchise is well known as a cult
By the
favorite.
eye of Agamotto!
I do personally believe that Shadows will easily at least bring 1 maybe 2 million in sales within its debut, if I had to guess right out of the gate. However, will it break 8 million to get even or more than
I'll
that?
patch you up.
Those reviews and impressions that are coming out, they are going to matter a lot in this case. But I think the ongoing conversation on Ubisoft clearly doesn't care about the culture and standards of the fact that we have so many skeletons that are jumping out of their closets all the time and their own executives getting accused of all sorts of sexual, racist, and overall awful allegations. To say that there's a lot riding on Shadows, that would be doing it great justice to the players. The game can be a smash out wild and pretty much cooked you. Like I said, to expect Shadows to become the next Monster Hunter Wilds is, well, stretching it a little. Because placing the two games up against one another, Wilds has far less controversy tied to it prior to its release. Sure, yes, the game doesn't run well on PC out of the gate.
Those bigots don't grow on trees, you know.
And I know some have tried to throw the woke card at Wilds and say it has diverse women or girl bosses. But that was also a nothing burger in my opinion, which is why you didn't see me playing those things myself ever on this channel or even on Twitch. But in Shadow's case, there's so much.
This is real firepower!
That has more baggage attached to it prior to release than this one does.
Only
Everything
60
about
seconds
Shadows
left.
is just mired in controversy and exposure. Ubisoft doesn't know how to translate Japanese culture to a video game.
Time to retreat.
Well, like I said, Shadows' one saving grace is the fact that it is an Assassin's Creed game. And I think the game could be terrible. People would probably still buy it because of the name alone. But I am not necessarily rooting for Shadows to fail because I am a fan of the series. I like the content.
Disappear!
I the games in the series already. I've played all these games. I play them mostly as junk food gaming, if you will. That's what they are. And no, I couldn't tell you that a single side quest was in, say, Odyssey or Valhalla despite 100% stuff. You remember just, having fun in those settings. Although, according to Yahoo Finance, at least
Against the world!
sell themselves as an instant
By the eye of Agamotto!
You're ready for Right, again. Anyway, the report states that Ubisoft's net bookings dropped around 35% already this year alone. 2025
Keep fighting until we win.
This is real firepower!
$1 only. And Shadows is being seen as the make or break moment. We're about to witness history. We're about to find out if Assassin's Creed is going to stay the rest of the franchise or become a change. Days or I guess a week or two after this video's release. Like I was saying, comparing Wilds to Shadows is a good comparison because it shows both sides of the coin. You can either have your game released to fanfare and then make you well over $400 million in 3 days like Wilds did, or end up like Ubisoft is right now, where they are genuinely about to drown themselves if Shadows doesn't perform well. And while sure, in its post-release hype, Wilds is now getting the sorts of articles like this one from PC Gamer, where they loathe how the game was holding their hands in low rank. I think Wilds still shows that Capcom knows what they're doing with this franchise in particular. And thankfully, they didn't double or triple down on the usual Californian nonsense that plagues video games these days. And I do think placing Wilds and even games like Wukong and others that have made big splashes against their Western contemporaries is, for good reasons, a fine example. For one, the West needs to prioritize real gameplay again and stop pushing agendas so much. Sure, you'll have the odd somewhat success out there like Avowed apparently was, where Screen Rant alleges that Avowed has hit 5.9 million players since launch. But this number, when further studied, is shown to come from an analyst group that confirms in their own words here, as you can read, that this number was found via estimates that the analysts made based on info that they could find online. Meaning the actual number of players who played Avowed is not what they're really saying, but just what they're pushing as fact without actual concrete evidence. And you know things haven't gone well when you kind of need to dance around the facts like this to come to a conclusion. Whereas with Monster Hunter, we just know that it sold 8 million in 3 days because Capcom said that and showed it. It's perplexing how Western gaming content just can't seem to reach the same numbers as the East anymore. Also remember that 5.9 supposed million players of Avowed, most of them didn't even buy the game at full price either. They just streamed it, so the actual profit from Avowed is far, far lower than say the amount Monster Hunter made from the 5.9 million sales of those 8 million in 3 days of comparison. Have we reached the point where the satisfaction and expectations of Western gaming media is so poor that the only way that these companies and studios can compete with their overseas competition is to now rely on subscription numbers or streams instead of actual paid copies anymore? I guarantee you that when Shadows launches, it will become one of the most played games that Ubisoft has made. But there will be a caveat that by most played, they'll mean via Ubisoft Play, which if you don't know, that's their Game Pass-like service for Ubisoft's games specifically, which again, you don't pay full price in order to play those games that way. Case in point, the continued destruction of Western franchises, once thought unbeatable, is becoming a reality. I don't know if Shadows will be able to somehow surpass Wilds in terms of players. I would be shocked if it even hits 100,000 in its first weekend of concurrent players on Steam, to be real with you. But the fact, whenever I compare what the West is doing versus the East, it always comes to the same sad realization, which is that this once very powerful, all-knowing side of gaming has been reduced to a shadow, no pun intended, of itself for the most part. Outside of some anomalies, customer satisfaction and trust in Western games has never been lower, outside of maybe Call of Duty and Fortnite for obvious reasons, but with the mass expansion into overseas markets and the continued success of brands like more, I ask this question: in 5 years' time, who do you think will be the king, so to
30
speak, of
seconds
gaming?
before you
Will it be
attack.
the East
Get ready.
or the West? I think I can confidently say that the East is going to overtake
If you
the West
step out of
before
line,
long.
Mr.
I mean, just go
Bonds,
look at
I
Tencent
will
for a
not
great example
hesitate
of this.
to rip
The
that
mega
metallic limb
Chinese
from your
giant owns an
body.
insane amount
Then
of
I guess it's a
assets
good thing
across
I
the
only
world
want
and many
to take you
companies that
out.
you likely play video games from. Just to name a few, Tencent owns 30% of Larian Studios, that's the Baldur's Gate 3
The
people.
battle starts in
40% of Epic Games,
4,
which makes Fortnite.
3,
80% of
2,
Grinding Gear games,
1.
they make Path of Exile.
All you need to
And
do
even,
is capture the mission
unfortunately,
area.
15%
Got
of
it?
From Software, the Dark Souls and Elden Ring.
Just as
The
I
unfortunate
forged the
reality
nation,
of the Western side of the
I
equation
shall yield to
is that
whatever
China just simply has the
king.
manpower to essentially outsize
feel like myself
West
again.
in pretty much every given metric due to sheer volume alone. Like I said, when a player moves from their own country to self-sustained and trusted, they could theoretically just feed into that 700 and then some million players that will be grown, by the way, and keep their population high. But Tencent, even yet, use that for Marvel rival. They have their assets stretched across so many that ultimately, even if you do buy something, your money is way overseas to China anyway. Of course, some may say putting people to stop supporting any studio or publisher that is like China. Sure, but it's possible that there's no way that you can convince a Fortnite enjoyer to stop playing it, or Rivalry, PUBG, Path of Exile, hell, even stuff like Wukong even. All of these games are more owned by the monolith that is
doesn't feel
going
right
to
here.
inevitably crush the West. Even
We can
Japan,
capture
all their games do well due to their resources. Oftentimes, they too need to submit to China to show them
Go get that vehicle
as
to
well.
its destination.
As of now, anyway, Tencent does not own Capcom. However, they are working with Capcom.
I am ready to put on a show.
Game version of more traditional money since
Us against the world.
Magneto! Ready? I really one more power, skin that monster just a bit more, you'll get your new weapon or armor. It is a double-edged sword, because while if and when each market's dominating everything, things like your identity politics will disappear in games. Mostly because their countries do not really allow for these sorts of expressions or ideologies to run amok in their countries, due to seeing how damaging they are clearly in the West right now. But at the same time,
You get a weapon, you get a weapon, you get a
this
weapon.
ideology will just be a new one, an ideology of pure iron fist that are crushing you down with insanely heavy monetization where you catch everything imaginable going forward. It really, no matter what you do, it's going to be impossible to eventually escape these things. I often catch myself wondering, what do I want? Do I want to $3 grand on values that obviously would just desecrate every franchise I have belong with? Or do I want those things removed, but then make it deal with the monetization of my video games more? Neither that it's becoming increasingly clear that there may not be unless Magic and the entire Western war games the likely reality is that the West pushes for things that aren't working, and it's going to definitely fail. And the more that I look, the more that are doing this are the Asian ones, not just China, but Asian in general, and we're reaching a point where things have to go one way or the other eventually. Because it can't keep doing this back and forth forever non-stop. I'll have a more westernized centric video coming after this one is published, but because it's principle, it seems like the West is just Final Fantasy VII Rebirth's director says Japanese devs now create with a global audience mind from the very start. Confirms games subjected to thorough ethical reviews tailored to different regions. Ryoko Hamaguchi stated during this interview that even when they make videos, now it's always being made with the best and Square Enix hasn't been doing the best either. Capcom and Sega with their other studios like Atlas or Ryu Studio, they have been kind of doing the sales that shows as well with the critical reception of their games versus Square. But what Square Enix is really doing, in my opinion, is what Capcom and others should avoid entirely. Even though Capcom is to some degree being riddled as well as it is cheap. The point is that pandering to the West isn't a good thing either. Monster Hunter doesn't sell because it's a Western series, which it isn't. It's Eastern obvious. Final Fantasy is and should be the same way. 2 doesn't sell because of those Western sensibilities, so to speak. It sells because influences. And like the overall industry battle at the heart of all of this that's going on, it's other Japanese companies like Square Enix, Forge,
Guess the world disappear!
Just make no mistake, it won't just be the West that has to submit, but even the other Asian markets that sit outside of China's control. And none of this is some bloodshed happening, but in terms of Western companies, I leave you with this question like that on the open. If you compare Ubisoft and others in China, comments, love and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video. The damage control surrounding the valves is pushed through pipes to gaslighting readers into believing false narratives mere days after the game's official release. So Avowed is out officially. It's on Xbox and PC only right now. The Game Pass numbers, they don't really matter in this discussion, because you can get Game Pass for as little as $12 But is Avowed doing well for Xbox? But it's because the barrier haunts you on that platform. That game does value.
Behold the God of Thunder!
Of course, this isn't stopping jaw-dropping legacy media websites to try to spin the story the same way they did with Dragon Age Veilguard, only to admit a month after that game's release that, yeah, it didn't resonate and was
I'm opening a
actually
portal.
an abysmal failure in the end.
All eyes
This
on
is from
these
Game Rant.
coordinates.
Avowed is already a big hit on Steam. This is sus, but it gets even more stupid
Get that
when you read
vehicle
our
moving again.
Game Rant this in a very selective way. They stated this something
Judge, jury, executioner!
which is again very selective because all the context is thrown out the window when displayed. Firstly, Halo 2 Deliverance 2 was not an old game. It came out at the very beginning of February 2025. This video that we're watching will be out on February 20th.
Us against the world.
That Kingdom Come 2 as of right now is well over 2 years removed from the life cycle of the initial game's window. So naturally, a new product is not because again, despite it's like saying that you are the fastest, but in reality,
By the eye of Agamotto!
so technically, sure, you are the fastest, but not really. Does that
The
make
current
sense?
score
Of course,
is
Game Rant
3,
also says that the
2,
game has positive
0.
reviews, which I mean is half
Time
true
to
at
switch
best.
things up.
It's sitting at an 80
including
on
which side
Metacritic,
you're
which,
on.
mind you, it's not bad, but it's not exactly Game of the Year, contender,
Open
change
your
your life
eye.
levels
The
of
right
Metacritic
heroes could make
score.
all
But
the
it also
difference.
doesn't end there, because Game Rant continues
No
their selective
timeline
approach where they
exists
say
where
this.
Magneto
Steam
yields.
database reported Avowed's 8,752 active players at the time of writing, which is an applaudable start to the game's longevity, and it reached an all-time peak of just over 17,000 players during its launch day. Are you guys being paid by Microsoft or Obsidian? Because you're out of your mind. In no company's mind is less than 10,000 players day one on the largest PC gaming platform for your new AAA RPG game that took almost 5
the
years to
future
make somehow
belongs
good.
to mutant
This is
kind.
frankly abysmal. That's being generous. As we can see here, Avowed, as of this video being posted, has hit an all-time player peak of
We'll be
just
coming in 30
17,000
seconds.
players on
Stay
Steam,
strong.
which is abysmal for a game made by a AAA studio. Even by AA studio standards,
I guess
these
we're doing the
numbers
team
would be
up thing
worrying
again.
out of the game. So let's just keep it simple and say that every copy of Avowed that was paid
Not as
full
long as
price
you keep
is
that
at
big nasty tongue
$70.
of yours.
This means with its all-time player peak, Obsidian has made just $1.2 billion in sales from their new game that took 5
The
years to
battle
make.
starts in 5.
Which again, for a
4,
AAA action RPG
3,
that is genuinely
2,
abysmal.
1.
Granted, Avowed did beat
You have to
the Outer
stop them
Worlds
from
numbers.
securing the mission area.
Another Obsidian RPG from its top confirmed player count on Steam by mere hundreds of players. However, in Outer Worlds case, it did also have a PlayStation 4 to fall back on for the majority of its support. Although a bit of a skewed example, when the Outer Worlds came out in Q3, 70% of the overall sales for that game came solely from PlayStation, with the other 22% of the overall sales being on PC and platforms. Overall, 6 years later, the Outer Worlds has sold about 5 million copies, and it's safe to say that a lot of that was because of the players. In this case right now, Avowed is not available yet, although I will definitely assure you so relying solely on PC players is the only real source of income because Game Pass is just a slot, and the money that's generated there isn't necessarily allowed because it's just an unpaid service that's full of other things too, like phones, laptops, for example. So this $1.2 million for the brand new game of release, that is very, very bad. If Obsidian didn't have Microsoft's Game Pass,
Lights out.
of us, this would be genuinely
I'm
grounds for the
opening a
entire
portal.
studio to be terminated overnight, if I'm being straight up with you
It's the
guys.
grand
It isn't good knowing that New Vegas, for example, hit a peak of the mid 40,000s well over 10 years ago. PC gaming was but a fraction of the size that it is right now. So for a more recent comparison, Veilguard hit almost 100,000 in its opening few days, and was still considered a resounding flop, status. So for about to reach about 25% of the player base Veilguard has launched, it's not really that fair. And had a confirmed player count on Steam around 250,000 players within the same period. Meaning if we were to divide Kingdom Come's player base between Avowed this week in a similar time frame, that Avowed has amassed an audience size equivalent to
Triple kill.
14.7%
unfinished business here.
And yet Avowed is made by a AAA RPG studio backed by $1 trillion company, while Kingdom Come is a much smaller operation that was made by, I guess, a AA company, kind of, almost AAA somewhat. Warhorse is kind of nebulous.
You need
It's
to
somewhere
stop that
between
vehicle in
different
tracks.
sizes, so it's not fair to call them full-blown AAA.
Good medicine.
And you know that Warhorse is costing them around $41 million.
A nice deep freeze.
Hey, so again, Fantastic! This means that you has roughly about $140 million so far in sales since its release. And Avowed, like I said, has made about $1.2 million. Very 50% of the profit of Kingdom Come in comparison. But again, I don't think the performance of Avowed in launch really matters to how it was sold by Microsoft. And like I said before in another video about Avowed,
By the eye of Agamotto!
you know, I'm also pretty much not try as hard to make quality products because if your boss is going to work for them to do their job and slack off and your pay and your future wouldn't really change, I think most people would then just not try to do this hard since if there's no incentive to perform better, then why bother in the first place, right? This is why in jobs and concepts like commission or tips and whatnot, people usually do try much harder to perform their jobs better because there's actual, incentive that extra effort would actually translate. I used to work as a server in a restaurant. I didn't do that job. Why would I even try? I would just do it that's what Game Pass is. And it's clear that Xbox doesn't really care about quality or competition anymore. This comes from Xbox Air. Phil Spencer says Xbox is done trying to convince PS5 and Switch players to move over, not trying to do it all over. This article pretty much solidifies the whole console war. It's 100% dead officially. There is no point in trying to fight with PlayStation or Xbox is better because now the only platforms that really matter are the PlayStation, PC, and Nintendo. And Nintendo, as you know, is really just everybody who's
Now the bad guy.
Here's what Phil Spencer has to say about all of this. There are people, whether it's their libraries on the PlayStation or Nintendo, whether it's they like the controller better because like the controller, there's no way that we should be able to build a business there, find our franchises there. I'm not trying to move them
By the eye of Agamotto!
also invest in the power so there you go. Head of Xbox just clearly stated that Microsoft is just done trying to continue to buy an Xbox. And at this point, the concept of an Xbox is still forward to the PlayStation or PC, I guess.
I am ready to put on a show. Only 60 seconds left.
Halo that they come to PlayStation, when it does, it will. At that point, this whole console war stuff will be done for. Thank God for that. You gotta agree, man. It's a done. But the ultimatum that Xbox's brand stands at is genuinely the fault of Microsoft and only Microsoft. They release subpar release
The
after release
Sorcerer
for
Supreme
years, with their
lives
competition
once
completely blowing them out of the water and winning Game of the Year awards while Xbox just kind of sat there forgotten. And I mean that Game Pass killed any legit brand loyalty, caused an entire business population of Xbox players to adopt a same approach. And now it doesn't matter. The game doesn't run well for and the companions are forgettable and literally all just fight. But this then just means that Microsoft no longer really cares about quality experiences. There's no incentive either in Microsoft
By the eye!
copies sold and down to the as long as the game's being considered good enough for Game Pass, I guess, which means gaming now for a richer product service, with a bunch of 6 or 7 other brands maybe there, then it is just what it is. And if you want the real Game of the Year game with the best optimization, go play on an Xbox. I mean, how embarrassing that Skyrim currently has
Final
more
score,
players in game
3,
than Valve.
2,
Skyrim
1.
is 14 years old at this point. Again, maybe this could change depending on when you see this video, but when a 14-year-old
Another
game that has
epic
been
victory!
remastered 4 times in Horizon Zero Dawn is outperforming your brand new action RPG, well, it kind of tells you what you need to know. Being good enough for Game Pass, that's one thing, but it's clear that Obsidian and Microsoft are also perfectly content with just releasing slop for a full price, because either way, it doesn't really matter if you buy it or not. This is why I keep saying that once Avowed does come to PlayStation, I would just suggest that you just wait for a huge sale before playing it. I'm not saying that you shouldn't play Avowed, but it is a game that is clearly one of those 7 out of 10 games that you buy for like $20 years from now, and then you just kind of enjoy it because it, didn't cost you much in the first place, I guess. Avowed's like junk food, you know what I mean? And then there's nothing technically wrong with enjoying junk food once in a while. But I don't know about you, but I personally can't justify $80 Canadian for some junk food game myself. But value is in the eye of the beholder, and some people will just buy anything, I guess. And maybe Game Pass isn't the true issue here, but simply that Avowed is mid. I mean, Starfield managed to break 300,000 players in its opening few days of release on Steam too. Again, 8 copies sold, not streamed. And some may try to say that Avowed was released on a weekday and that's why it's not performing, but no, Avowed's release date was on a Tuesday. Starfield released on a Wednesday, both middle of the week, so to speak, so it wasn't important. And the fact that Avowed only really added about 4,000 current players at release versus the early access numbers, that just kind of shows you that there really wasn't an appetite for this game specifically due to its quality or its messaging. And maybe if Microsoft incentivized the game studios that they have to make better quality products, there would be some actual real
Which
hype for
hero
them.
do you
But
think you wanna be
unfortunately,
today?
it's the exact
Be wary.
opposite, and it is
No
sad to see. I mean,
timeline
you only
exists
need
where
to look at a
Magneto
comparison
yields.
between Avowed and Skyrim to see the stark difference in how these games operate and feel. So there was this video from a YouTube channel named Game Right.
Now,
They do
who
plenty
am
of
I gonna
comparisons
banish
with
from
other
this
video
match?
games if you want to see more of that kind of stuff. But here's some of the comparisons between Avowed versus Skyrim, so please watch.
You'll need a top-notch team to win this one.
Escape pod ready. Opening escape capsule.
And as you just saw, Avowed erases
We
the
can no
arrows
longer
people
hide
constantly
from the
react
dangers
to,
that
lit
lie
on
beyond
fire,
our
for God's
shores.
sake. And NPCs in general, they don't really have routines. They just kind of
30
stand
seconds
there.
before you
While
attack.
Skyrim
Get
has
ready.
all of this. And again, it's a 14-year-old game at this point. And for example, while I have problems with Kingdom Come 2 from what I've played in my almost 60 hours of playtime with that game so far, I will admit it is nice to see how every NPC pretty much has a detailed daily routine that they follow. For an example, I don't have footage of this unfortunately, but there was one quest that I had to get from this guy who works in a mine,
The battle
and
starts
he
in
wouldn't
5,
speak to me about what he
4,
needed while he
3,
was on the
2,
clock working. But
1.
once I waited till around 8 or
All you
9
need to do
p.m.
is
when
capture
he was
the
off
mission
work,
area.
and
Got
then
it?
he was willing to speak to me because he wasn't
This
on the clock.
entire world
So that
is
was
a
a
living
nice
mass.
thing, but Avowed clearly has
would
done
be
this. The
impressed.
world is just good enough, I
here
guess,
they
for
are
Game
now.
Pass, and that's kind of sad. Although I think another big reason why Avowed just wasn't a widely accepted despite the lack of quality and all of that was, let's be real, their art director is insane. And people just simply do not want to support someone like Matt Vincent, who is the art director, who is arguably one of the worst pro-world game developers in the industry right now, because back in March 2024, Elon Musk said that it's not acceptable for the industry to white men exclusively and make content that is spicy. Hansen, the Avowed, would say that this would only improve further even more awful or likely more specific. Not a good look. No, but again, this will reward the price head loss election, probably still the impact of power in the cultural zeitgeist. Then, Trump wants that Hansen in response. They need to do the thing of shame for the rest of their future lives, to be honest, and that is weekly. So this man just hates conservatives, I guess. And you see what I mean? This is likely a big reason why Avowed is being beaten by Skyrim during its release week in numbers. Because people, frankly, just don't want to support games or any content really that's made by people. Matt Hansen, unironically, is one of the most spiteful and hateful developers I've seen in a while. That's saying something considering what I cover on this channel. Look, I'm not saying
Us against the world.
I would have checked out Shroud, but it's starting to a point where I don't really want to support this guy's continued employment. And these are those thunder! I genuinely think Obsidian wants to be good by their studio and win back customer loyalty. Their best option, to be honest with you, is to remove Matt Hansen from their studio.
Mutants
sure, his art and work would still be an Avowed regardless, but it would at least cause players to maybe want to check out the game, knowing that at the very least, if they were to buy the game, like none of that money would be going to Matt Hansen, further employ him, and he's clearly out of date reviews. I just think that we reached the point with all of these people rest where players are just not really genuinely and I think we know that his going for the muzzle of Matt Hansen, because ever since he started against conservatives, all the things that made him go viral, he can go look like that. That man has this radio across all the social media. But at this point, the very notion that this guy still works there will continue to poison the well, so to speak, will just continue to make people not really want to get involved or support any upcoming Obsidian games. Of course, you
Only
can
60
play
seconds
many games made by people who have someone or a few guys on there that probably despise you. I know for sure there's these no, that's not true. But now with social media being how it is, the connection between developer and player has never been easier, and frankly, that is the word of curse in a lot of ways, and it being positive in the sort of like celebrities. Flashback celebrities like they were gods and embers. But once social media blew up and then these celebrities were given platforms to voice their unfiltered opinions, suddenly the masses were able to quickly realize that, oh wow, a lot of these celebrities are actually morons. They have nothing smart or important to say. For a good example, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the Avengers were fun too, and now Mark Ruffalo reminded us it is just done look at the Avengers, and I just more so see a bunch of the same realization, it stems back with game development. But really anyone else, I think social media in general has been largely a massive mistake, and we were never meant to know this much about one another or be this connected so constantly. And when I think about it, maybe a lot of these games that failed, like
no timeline exists where Magneto yields.
Maybe they would have done far better had their devs not had access to voice their opinions so openly like they can now. Avowed could have just come out and been a fun action RPG. Sure, it had pronouns, but that had the option to be turned off, which was likely added due to the whole Matt Hansen art director backlash. I can almost guarantee that. But while it still would have had some ugly character designs and questionable writing at best, at the very least, it would have just released as a game that was fun to play, I guess. But now you have this cloud that is hanging over the head of everybody with the art director. And it shows how the opinions and actions of one bad apple ruin the
I will bring
entire batch. Like, even as I
Where
continue
there
to
is
review
evil
We'll be
in
coming in
this
30
universe,
seconds.
videos,
Stay
I find
strong.
myself
I will
not
bring
liking the
peace
game
to
at
this
times,
universe.
simply because I know how the game
Just
director
say
of
it.
that game
There's
thinks
nothing I
outside
can't
of the world
fix.
he was
I
tasked
mean,
with creating
have
here.
you
Daniel
met
Vavra,
Chris
the director of
Tippy
Kingdom Come
Toe?
2, being asked to fans online and attacking people and starting fights because he's got thinner skin than he would like to admit. I have to admit, it has had an effect on my experience within Kingdom Come 2. Because while there's some things I like about the game, it is
The
a
battle
janky
starts in
game with
5,
by-the-numbers
4,
open world game design and the
3,
cherry on
2,
top, is that I know
1.
that Daniel Vavra probably
You have to
hates
stop them from
even though
securing the
he
mission
used
area.
to be an advocate for gamer games.
Ooh,
But he
check this out.
conveniently threw the whole movement aside once he proceeded to get the first Kingdom Come game fully funded. Then once he had built himself a sustainable platform, suddenly he was against it. That's shady, man. That's weird. And now moving forward, whatever Warhorse does next, that version of Vavra
I
is two-faced and
appreciate you.
juxtaposed against whatever his team makes sense to.
Someone
It's
scratch my
unrealistic
back.
to believe that every single person working on these AAA games, which usually spans into hundreds of developers, are all going to be nice people who agree with you in every opinion of the nice people. I know that's
You're welcome.
realistic. I know there's someone on the team with the game that I like who probably would love to hear that I was harmed or died or something. But if you ask me, if you're a part of something where art is being made, it is your moral duty to ensure that you don't screw
My
up
good
what's
deed
people
for
can make. Just because you're butthurt
You're
about
welcome.
something like Elon Musk or the election, like the Matt Hansen. Because all this guy ended up doing was derailing his subpar action RPG game because he wanted to own the chuds, but ended up just owning himself and tanking his entire studio reputation in the process. And I don't think for a second that this blemish by Matt Hansen is a one and done, by the way, because again, whatever Obsidian makes next will have this guy's stain attached to it as long as he stays
Ooh, check
employed
this
there.
place out.
So it's really up to Obsidian to decide whether they want their games to be taken in a serious
I'll
light
patch you
again,
up.
or they can protect this guy's opinions and so good it makes the
Someone
very
scratch my
audience that
back.
Obsidian as a company is tasked with catering to. I used to be defensive of Obsidian back in the day, but this was back when Chris Avellone, the co-founder, was still a part of the studio. I mean, back in 2023, Avellone
We
confirmed that
are
he did try to get
unbelievable.
all that Elder Scrolls spin-offs to get made in partnership with Bethesda. Alvin kept saying
This
no,
is
when
real firepower!
As Alvin saw the success of New Vegas, and he didn't want Obsidian outdoing the studio with an Elder Scrolls spin-off or whatever else. But Chris Avellone has clearly long since left Obsidian, but writing since his departure
I'll
has
patch you
also
up.
taken a nosedive since then. While that version of Obsidian, the one where Chris Avellone was there, could have probably made some Elder Scrolls spin-off games or new Fallout games, these days, with how Obsidian is with this Matt Hansen being protected in the state of Avowed, maybe this was the case. Because this Obsidian, Obsidian is nothing but yet another ship of Theseus creation. Just like
Behold the god of
that makes Obsidian
0,
with new
2,
wood, but at
1.
that point, is the ship still Obsidian? And it all comes down to the same realization I came to with Rocksteady as well. The ship that
Well, you
harbors the
can't expect
studio
to
is
win
not
them all.
important. It's the crew that makes the ship what it is. And when Chris Avellone and his team that were at Obsidian left, that's what made Obsidian the award-winning developers that they were known for. But now that same ship is under new captains with a crew that despises you and me, and it just shows despite having the cannons, or the same wood frame and the flags and all of that, that the ship that Obsidian used to be, it's all meaningless because the people that are helming the ship, they clearly just aren't as good as those who came before. And when you compare New Vegas to Avowed, yeah, I mean the proof is in the product and it's sad to see. So I don't have much faith, if at all, that Obsidian is anymore who